Terraria's had its fair share of iconic crossovers in its lifetime, including the amazing Don't Starve and Stardew Valley, as well as some more, well, obscure ones like Worms and KFC. And so today, we're going to see if we can beat Terraria using only crossover loot. Well, more precisely, weapons and armour, as our content pool is rather limited. Nevertheless, this is by far the hardest challenge we've ever partaken, requiring us to seriously think outside the box when it comes to selecting our extremely scarce options. So, strap yourselves in, grab a snack, and let's crack on with a challenge I definitely regret picking. Oh, and yeah, this is kind of insane, but we're 7k subs away from 200k now, so if you enjoy what you see, let's try and hit that before the holidays. Why not? Starting our playthrough off, things were not going to be straightforward at all. As you guessed it, the copper short sword we spawned with was in fact contraband. So what now, you may be wondering? Well, locally for us, and thanks to the as aforementioned Don't Starve crossover, there was one summon weapon we could obtain right off the rip, very, very easily. Oh yeah, it was Abigail's Flower's time to shine, which, for those of you who don't know, can be farmed by completing one monumental objective over and over again. Dying. Yep, we're truly starting at the bottom here, with the first 5 minutes of our brand new world consisting of throwing ourselves off a very high place in hopes to end our life from produce a tombstone, which, with a bit of a luck, has a small chance of spawning Abigail's Flower next to it. As this is random though, there is no saying when it'll happen, so with plenty of tombstones down, I figured we'd spend this extra time wandering the realms of, what's it called? The fraudulent toilet. And so, with our first chest and real death out the way...
Oh my god, I forgot they did damage. Just kill me, I got it all, doesn't matter.
What was really going to be our next plan of action? Well, I figured that relying solely on Abigail as our first form of offense was stupid, so after glancing at our very limited weapon list once more, I suppose fishing for the Falcon Blade won't be a bad idea, as all the one-drop yo-yos were completely out of reach without using another weapon first.
Can't use the blowpipe.
Before that though, we bumped into something truly awesome.
Ooh!
That's a heart shrine. And no, it's not vanilla, but is a result of having the Consolaria mod installed to give us extra missing crossover content from back in the day. Oh yeah, we are doing this properly. Anyway, not a bad start, eh? And the suffering of not having a weapon to defend ourselves was about to be overcome, as on the very first night...
Oh, the strategy.
Abigail's beautiful red flower decided to show up. A shoddy one, mind you, but a weapon is a weapon. And yeah, if this damage is anything to go by, this thing sucked with only one summon slot, so increasing this was an absolute priority at this point. Okay, let's get back on with that fishing objective, which after finding plenty of bait from cans of worms would genuinely be feasible now. So after exploring our world a little bit more and selling a bunch of stuff we couldn't use for cash, I guess it was time to head somewhere and get fishing. Which may confuse you a tad to see us in the underground ice biome, but all will be explained in a second. You see, I wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Oh, snowflakes!
As one of the first obtainable ways we could increase our summoner slots was by gathering Flink's fur to craft the Flink's fur coat. Crossover armor doesn't appear till post-mech, you see, which with us having absolutely no luck fishing or buying crates, was fulfilled well before we'd even made an attempt to obtain the Falcon Blade. Yeah, we were gonna probably need to rethink this one. Not to worry though, as just like that, we had just doubled our summoner slots to 2, which due to the way Abigail's Flower works, will scale up the summoning stats rather than quantity.
Look at that damage all of a sudden, it's like 5.
Okay, it seems we were actually dealing more than 1 damage now, which is something, but still far from where we needed to be if we actually wanted to, you know, play the game. So it was time we took this fishing malarkey more seriously, with us next heading to the utterly painful underground desert for a source of amber, as crate potions would be essential if we actually wanted to obtain the Falcon Blade sometime in the next decade. As with all things though, we quickly became sidetracked once again, with once returning home, another substantial Abigail's Flower upgrade coming out of nowhere. Just look at that prefix. Oh, And so with this newfound power,
What the hell is going on here?
I figured now was the perfect time to finish exploring our surface, which not only uncovered this very steep dungeon entrance, but also an elusive free chest East Ocean, which was quite the sight for sore eyes. And on top of that, another crucial asset of the playthrough had just decided to show up, the Demolitionist, which may confuse you at first. However, as we are doing this properly with all the crossover items, even from the 3DS, there was one weapon in particular that was going to make or break the possibility of this challenge. Oh yeah, the Holy Hand Grenade. Man, where do I even start with this thing? Other than the fact that for a relatively cheap cost, we could legally obtain a 600 damage explosive to hopefully dive bombers into progression. Of course though, 5 gold a pop still wasn't that cheap, and mining gold ore for all eternity was going to become a consistent trend of this playthrough. All should be worth it in the long run though, as in theory, this would give us the firepower to achieve post-worm progression and unlock a whole host of actual non-consumable weapons going forward. Oh, and speaking of weapons, it was time we fully channeled boredom into obtaining that damn Falcon Blade. So after fully potioning up this time, we could only hope, as with a 6.08% chance drop rate from iron crates, this was gonna be a slog. I mean, what other choice did we have though?
Oh my god, that was close.
Other than the Rally Yo-Yo, which rarely dropped from Shellys and Crawdads, this was literally the only physical weapon we could obtain right now. And I kid you not though, despite this rather gloomy start, we bloody got it on the second iron crate fished up. Yeah, that could have gone on. And guys, I don't even really have the words for this.
Yes! Oh my god!
But this stroke of God RNG didn't even matter, as it was about to be replaced immediately anyway. Yep, that's a 3.9% drop rate on our very first kill. All I can say is, thanks Terraria gods, but please be easy on me with the inevitable consequences that were going to be a result of this outrageous early game luck. For now though, let's enjoy the moment, shall we? As we were seriously starting to make some progress now, with our basic but usable arsenal just about being enough to stand our ground during a blood moon. So I guess the question now was, what was next? And well, judging by the alarming amount of dynamite being purchased from our Demolitionist, I guess it was time to commit some war crimes, boss killing, against the wormy boy himself. So let's head right on over there and see what we can see.
Abigail!
Oh, for God's sake again. Alright, after actually binding our healing button and building a very rudimentary reader, I suppose it was pretty much time to see just how much these holy hand grenades were going to carry us. As having never used these before in my life, I truly had absolutely no idea what these puppies were going to do. Spoiler, big boom. So I mean, without much further ado, let's summon that worm and drop some bombs.
I have no idea what these are gonna do. It makes the holy noise, but it did so much damage.
Well, yeah. Aside from basically taking out the entirety of our corruption biome in one fight, I think it was safe to say that we'd be in good hands, at least for this fight, with the first few blows crippling the boss, allowing us to finish him off with our yo-yo. I tell you what though, without these, I honestly highly doubt we would have been able to make it this far with just the Rally and Abigail's flower alone. So I'm very grateful for this divine intervention, if you want to call it that. So, with our first major boss down, what did this mean for us loot-wise? Well, a few things were now available, including the most important NPC of this entire playthrough. Oh yeah, without the Tavern Keep, Hardmode and beyond would basically be impossible, right? Before we did go hunting him down though, we funnily enough did have a slime rain to finish first, and for curiosity's sake, a bomb contact damage test, just to confirm that we did completely cheat death not to explode during that last fight.
Yeah, why was I invincible?
I'm not gonna complain, I'm really not. Anyway, with Slime Rain comes King Slime, which just like that, gave us our swift second boss defeat of the playthrough, and an expert item I'd never used in my life. It's time to really impress me. Alright, good stuff. And since we were on a roll, I figured why not continue the streak with an Eye of Cthulhu defeat, which honestly really let good old Abigail shine, as with the addition of a Summoner Potion, 3 slots meant she was dealing 14 odd damage per hit now, not too shabby. And this combined with our rather yo-yo and passable mobility meant for a pretty nice, albeit obscure, I have Cthulhu defeat, using a loadout I'd never even dreamed of using against this boss. Alrighty, we had money in the bank, an ever-evolving summon, and now enough high explosives to hopefully assist us with our next objective, which, speaking of, had to be something which would increase our regular damage output, as although the Rally and Abigail were doing just fine, we obviously had to find something better to take us into hard mode with, which after looking at our options, of course landed on Deiclops being our next real upgrade. But I mean, with that being technically a last pre-hard mode boss, we had to bridge the gap somehow, and with the Will Abigail scales, Queen Bee seemed the logical next step to get us that B armor upgrade, because more summon slots meant a better Abigail in every way. Now, usually I do give Queen Bee a miss in my playthroughs, so I'm not too sure what this fight's going to be like, but with some trusty emergency holy hand grenades in our back pocket, I'm sure we'll figure it out, which after finding the spawner in the smallest beehive humanly possible, what is this? I guess would be put to the test. Well, not before quickly checking back home for an improved flower. Nah, never mind. Alright, brace yourselves, ladies and gents, because you're about to witness one of the sloppiest Queen Bee fights of the century. You see, while I did try and utilise the hand grenades in some way or another,
oh my god, it's summoned every single bee.
their 5-second fuse really made this more of a hassle than it was worth, and in the end, did far more damage to our precious jungle biome than the bee itself. Luckily though, despite my massive incompetence here, we could more or less tank the damage enough to chip her away with Abigail and the yo-yo. And I mean, barely, but a win is a win, I guess. And after far longer than I'd like to admit, the Queen Bee was down.
Oh, I'm on 2.
Right, this meant great stuff for us, as not only would the as aforementioned bee armor give our crutch Abigail another slot, but would also lead us to another other slot thanks to the Witch Doctor, which would only be a matter of time before he moved in and offered us his precious pygmy necklace for a small fee. Oh, and while on the topic of NPCs, guess who I bumped into down in the mines? The man himself, who, while not too useful right now, not selling any armor till post-mech, could still get the ball rolling in terms of the Old One's army invasion, requiring us to complete a minimum of 1 to be allowed to use his illegal trap weapons in regular play. So I mean, since we've got one hell of a long road ahead of us in terms of completing countless amounts of these, let's get some practice in now, as I wouldn't mind the Ballisticana Summit for a bit of extra support. And man, this was unfortunately very much a rude awakening for this challenge playthrough, as I think I completely forgot why nobody does this invasion anyway, because it's so bloody difficult, and already allowed me to peek into the future in terms of upcoming rage and brain cell loss. Like, this is the tier 1 version, guys, and I was getting my absolute backside kicked through.
Harpies really aren't helping.
I suppose the only good thing is, as mentioned, we don't technically need this right now.
I freaking died.
But will be definitely looming in my mind as a future pain we'll have to endure. For now though, I think it was finally time for a sweet yo-yo upgrade, which would hopefully be enough of a bridge to reach Deiclops with. Of course, I'm talking about the Valor, which if you hadn't guessed from our current ongoings, would require a Skeletron kill. Not to worry though, as with our total minion slots now reaching 5 thanks to the full B armor and necklace, Abigail was seriously starting to scale into oblivion, which I think unironically makes her one of, if not the best late pre-Hardmode summon in the game. She's just so good now. And what makes this fight even better was the fact that dungeon bricks were explosion resistant, allowing us to truly finesse that Skelly Boy with our bomb blazing skills. And yeah, while we may have been cutting it a tad close for this fight,
Yes! 1000 damage!
we just managed it with less than a minute to spare, which meant it was time to get our trusty yo-yo and another summon slot. Oh yeah, I hadn't forgot about the Bewitching table, which combined with a Summoner Potion would give us a total 6 slot Abigail, well before the Wall of Flesh. And if that isn't enough for a Deiclops kill, then I don't know what is. Anyway, with both our dungeon objectives completed very swiftly, I wanted to waste no time and start working on that Deerclops kill. As although using one-drop yo-yos wasn't the end of the world, I don't think I can quite put into words how much I wanted to use a ranged weapon at this point. Just the thought of holding the pneumatic horn made me jizz in my pants. Why do I write these? Alright, as the only requirement to fight Deerclops is that she's in the snow biome, I set up a little cheese platform and cracked on. And you know, Deerclops really is quite a bizarre fight for where it's placed, because honestly, this was about 10 times easier than the Queen Bee and Skeletron. And yep, I know we have slightly more damage output, but even then, as long as you can just move along a platform, it's really a non-issue. The only thing I would say is, I do kinda regret carving an Earth-sized hole in my snow biome, as this was only gonna make future fights more of a faff. Yeah, I don't know, it was basically overkill. And well, with our first one down, we were gonna need to do a few more to get our beloved pneumatic horn, which literally about 5 minutes later was in our hands, and with a decent reforge. Oh my god, it's nice to use something other than a small circle attached to a piece of string, it really is. And this on its own isn't even a bad weapon, competing with the likes of the Mini Shark. I mean, it loses, but you know, it's still in the same ballpark. Despite all this though, who knows, maybe our primary weapon won't even impact the outcome of our upcoming fight anyway. A shock horror, the Wall of Flesh was up, which meant those ever so holy hand grenades were going to be more useful than ever before. So after crafting an absolute boatload of these in prep, it was time to complete the usual Terraria tradition of a Elevator, which while doing so, really got me thinking about just how much I'd want to see a Terraria X Binding of Isaac crossover. Make it happen, please! Once we arrived, although there was nothing else we could obtain down here that could help us right now, well, other than a voodoo doll I guess, Hellstone had to be mine for our pick. And I mean, with that done, it was time to construct our very much temporary Hellbridge, as we'd most definitely be rebuilding this thing if we were to fail our first attempt. But you know, let's not be pessimistic quite yet, as I had a really good feeling about this. Grenades are naturally good against the wall, so these much larger, more explosive ones should in theory wipe the floor. But I guess there was only really one way to find out. So after returning home one last time to make some final minute amends and catching the tail end of the elusive meteor shower event, it was time for the big walk. Well, the big fall, should I say, as we were ready for our first attempt.
I'm gonna get a nade down already. It's already fallen off, it's gone very wrong.
Which immediately after summoning it in, consisted of spurging out random holy hand grenades across our bridge in unexpected hope one would line up and dish out a critical hit. Which remarkably had already gotten the wall to half health. Jesus! Things weren't going to stay quite this simple though. You see, as the wall's speed increases to lower itself, timing these things was becoming bloody hard, and that 5-second fuse was soon going to stop us dealing damage altogether. Thankfully though, this is where our college pneumatic horn stood in the spotlight.
Oh my god, he's dead!
And exactly what we needed to finish the wall off. Hey, I knew that thing was going to be worth going our way for. What a beast. And just like that, things were about to be shaken up big time, as hard mode was upon us. Now, this of course meant a few things for us, in that for one, the scope of viable weapons we could obtain had just multiplied, giving us a few avenues to explore at this stage, and two, we still had all the painful regular early hard mode activities to complete first, with a less than ideal weapon, as really, if we wanted a proper upgrade to our offensive capabilities, we were going to need that tier 2 Old One's army ASAP, which unfortunately was still locked behind a mech boss. For now though, we had to work with what we had, which while going through the usual ore progression, did redirect us slightly. You see, while my original intention was to just get the best adamantite armor we could and be done with it, there was one feature of our trusty Abigail summon that made spider armor ever so tempting. You see, unlike any other weapon in all of Terraria, Abigail's flower actually scales with hard mode, meaning just minutes ago, it had received one hell of a buff, which our newly obtained spider armor could monopolize off nicely. Still though, perhaps this glass cannon approach wouldn't be the way forward, but I guess we'll just have to see, as almost immediately after making this pivot, fully pushing hardcore into a yo-yo setup was also ever so tempting, with this incredibly lucky skeleton merchant find giving us not only a massive yo-yo upgrade, but all the accessories we need for the yo-yo bag. I am torn, but I mean, this was the aim of the challenge at this point, to give us an obscure set of items to work with. So I guess, let's just be a yo-yo summoner, which before anything else, didn't give us a concrete reason to finally force our goblin tinkerer into our world, as we shockingly still hadn't had a single invasion occur naturally. So after summoning this ourselves, all we had to do was storm our way through this and find that conman, which, I'll tell you, I think really highlighted just how weak we really were, as, man, this was not easy.
I just can't do anything. I can't do anything. How many, man?
Like, I get that we're in hard mode now, but at one point I genuinely felt soft-locked with how many times we were dying, while progressing minimally through the event. I guess the combination of frail armour and a mid-pre-hard mode weapon does not go a long way against the ever-so-annoying Goblin Warlock. Luckily though, like all things, they must come to an end, and after staggering over the finishing line, we spared absolutely no time finding our Tinkerer.
Oh look, it's this tool.
As the DPS increase from the yo-yo bag Apollos reforging was desperately needed. Okay. At least we're a little bit back on track now, but still far from fine. Yeah, I couldn't even get a pair of wings.
How do I kill that? Right.
So, with all this failure surrounding us all of a sudden,
Goblin Tinkerer, why are you still underground, you idiot?
I wanted to do something chill, but I knew would be more than powerful enough to achieve. The Tier 1 Old Ones army. Yeah, not only did I still need to prove myself victorious, but would need a heck of a lot of currency later if we planned on buying armor sets and stuff. But with this being sockrteez, of course this wasn't quite that simple.
You just ruined my whole life, why don't you?
Yeah, I was getting pretty miffed off at this point.
Are you flipping kidding me, man?
But as soon as we weren't being invaded by the most OP enemy you've ever seen mid-invasion, the Tier 1 army was defeated. Oh. You know, this part right here might be the closest I've been to thinking this challenge actually wasn't possible, at least with my average skill level, and that's being generous. So we really had to come up with something huge if we wanted to progress, and we were basically stuck with what we had until that post-mech checkpoint. So, it all rested on one thing that it was always going to come down to, the thing it had to be. A destroyer cheese, which with our holy hand grenades still shimmering in our pocket brightly, had a lot resting on their shoulders. So yeah, as you can see by this amazing layered bomb-catching contraption, it was time to be hard carried again. Honestly, I just added these as an extra crossover item, but they're becoming so crutch. Anyway, with these summon made, let's give it a crack.
No, we've got a wyvern to deal with first. Pause the gameplay.
Which initially I was still very nervous for, as the destroyer does have a lot of health. But very quickly it became apparent that I had nothing to be worried about, as even though they were a ball ache to line up, that 600 base damage AoE was beating the living daylights out of the destroyer's many segments. It was about lining them up and hoping the boss crossed right into that path. Let's just say it's a damn good job I made 50 of these. And after, honestly not even that long, Abigail actually got the last laugh with that hard mode buff plus all our other gear stacking to make her a mean killing machine. I honestly didn't think she'd do jack against this boss, so what a pleasant surprise. Anyway, all in all, the potentially run-stopping hurdle had just been overcome thanks to Don't Starve and Worms Free. Which in a weird way did mean things were about to get even harder, as our ever so precious spider armor, and any other armor for that matter, was now contraband, as after all, this was a crossover loot only playthrough. So with our eyes now set on one of the 4 sets sold by the Tavern Keep, we literally had no other choice but to farm the tier 2 version of this invasion, in hopes of A, getting enough currency to afford a full set of this armor, and B, making it far enough to obtain one of the many utterly essential weapons we could use to progress past the mechs and beyond. But with our best available weapon right now being a mid-tier yo-yo, this was not going to be easy once again. So let's just crack on with the inevitable straight away, shall we? Guys, this is probably the easiest way I can put this, but what you're about to see is only a small glimpse of the amount of time spent farming this damn invasion. And if there's any weight to this, I don't think I'll ever do an Old Ones army ever again after this challenge. It's just so time consuming, and as you can see, saying we were desperate at this point would be an understatement, with our usual old trusty pile of holy hand grenades just evaporating the platform and completely sabotaging a run. What it honestly came down to in the end was just optimized track placement of the Ballista and Lightning Aura Staff, as well as fully focusing on that one precious Ogre spawn per invasion, which although had a pretty generous pool of guaranteed weapon drops at our disposal, had only 2 we were actually interested in.
Why is this terrible?
As unfortunately, the Brand of the Inferno, Sleepy Octopod, and Ghastly Glaive were all essentially just true melee weapons. And which ones do you think we got first? Yeah, this was definitely that early game look coming back to haunt us. But you know, let's just be thankful our setup did allow us to at least just about defeat a ogre, as although extremely monotonous and painful, it was only a matter of time before we got what we wanted, which landed us on the Phantom Phoenix. Not the favourable of the two, but an actually powerful weapon, goddammit! This was pretty exciting stuff now, as despite our restriction to this bow until post-Golem, there was so many external factors we could leverage to optimise its damage output, like our arrows and accessories. Oh, also, it was finally time to equip our first crossover armor set now we had the currency, which, you know, although would basically make Abigail redundant, was seriously overdue, as that defense and damage boost would go a long way for us. So long, Abigail, you tried us extremely well. Now, with everything looking pretty tip-top at this point thanks to our new bow, it was time to take out the other 2 mech bosses to get us on the road towards the tier 3 Old Ones army, as once again, I mean, there's just no more crossover loot that can help us until that point. And so with the twins up first, this was the first true exercise of our new Dungeon Defender's weapons capabilities. And you know, I've said this before, but the Phantom Phoenix is a really solid bow, and without its Old Ones army obtainability, would probably be used a lot more often. And although this initial fight did result in a death from probably just pure skill issue, on a second run, I was really starting to get a good feel for this thing. Yeah, it would be nice if it did a little bit more damage, but with what we've just had to endure in the past, I see any hard mode ranged weapon as meta at this point. And after a short while, the twins were down. So like any true Terraria enthusiast, you follow straight up with that Prime fight, which I'm happy to say was probably the most chill fight of the entire playthrough so far. We had armor complementing our weapon, a good damage output, things were actually starting to feel normal. However, with Prime now down, this is where the challenge part of this playthrough comes back in full force, as we still had 2 more bosses to take out with only this weapon, and there was nothing we could change about that. So, with us first completing the usual pre-Plantera rituals, which thinking about it now, why did I mine Chlorophyte? We can't make anything. And then forgetting just how holy our holy hand grenades were.
Wait, is that going to be too close?
You know what, come on. I got closer than I had any right to. It was next time to use one of these previously dependent balls of love and joy once again. Not from an offensive perspective this time, but a practical one, being the perfect world clearing tool for creating our Plantera arena. And if anything, we went a little overboard actually. Anyway, the true test would be if our now underspec'd Phantom Phoenix would have what it takes to defeat that Planty boy, which after leading back through half a continent to the arena, proved itself to pack the required punch nice and early, and similar to the Prime fight, kept us in control with Plantera not posing much of a threat at all, which was a really nice surprise, as let's be honest, if you can ace Plantera, you can most definitely ace Golem. And there you have it, quite clean and tidy plant kill with the Phoenix and a full set of Huntress armor. So I suppose without much mucking about, let's get straight into that Lizard Temple and beeline that Golem kill, which I was really not worried about at this point, as on paper, the Phantom Phoenix's piercing Phoenix projectile combined with the onslaught created from Holy Arrows would be extremely effective against this dude, which as you can see was half the truth, as although this boss is susceptible to the things mentioned, we can't forget that fundamentally this weapon was now way behind progression. Not to worry though, as Withers very luckily been able to clutch the kill on the first fight.
Oh my god, I'm on literally 5 health.
This did mean that another door into a vast array of powerful weaponry had in fact opened. And oh, these were some big ones this time, including the likes of some of the best weapons in the entire game. Obtaining these, however, now that was a different story, as we once again found ourselves in a similar position to how we were in early hard mode, completely dependent on our ability to defeat the Old One's army. But this time we had a bit of cream on top. We had Betsy to kill. So, after spending our last remaining defender medals on a single tier 3 trap, that's all we could afford, it was time to gauge what we were playing with here. And while, yeah, things were much harder than the tier 2 version, I felt the difficulty jump was nowhere near as steep as our step from tier 1 upwards. And with the Phantom Phoenix obviously being pretty ideal for dealing with lines of enemies, I was pretty hopeful for us. But of course, we can't have nice things, because before we knew it, we were completely overrun and didn't even make it to the final wave. Yeah, not our best performance. But hey, we've figured it out before, so we'll figure it out again. And after spending a bit of time maximizing our accessories, and more importantly, upgrading to the tier 3 range set of crossover armor, our second attempt was far more successful, with keeping ogres in check being my main priority. And just before I was about to say, "Ooh, we're doing quite well again," Betsy just had to pop in and show her big ugly face just to ruin our entire day. She was just a completely different beast compared to the rest of the invasion, literally, and would have to rely on a way of increasing our fight time to be as long as possible. Which, after noticing something cute listed on our Red Riding Armor's cert bonus, might have just been the remedy for a lot of problems. You see, one thing I didn't realise until now that these Old One's Armor sets have in common is that they all individually buff a particular Old One's Army sentry, and by the looks on the wiki, this was a whopper. And with our set benefiting the explosive trap, this had to be it. Oh, and just in case of emergency, I finally made the arena blast proof just so God could intervene if he really wanted to. Anyway, this didn't matter in the end because, wow, these new explosive traps were busted. I mean, really, this tier 3 invasion went from how are we gonna do this to a walk in the park, and calling these things mines would be inaccurate, as they seemingly never stop exploding and basically annihilate anything that walks near them. So naturally, the amount of defense this gave our Eternia Crystal during the Betsy fight meant despite our lower single target damage output, we could take our sweet old time. And while maybe not the cleanest Betsy fight you've ever seen, for one it took over 4 minutes for God's sake, we had her by the hand.
Yes!
And as if this monumental victory could be spiced up even more, rewarded us with the only endgame weapon I've been truly wishing for this entire playthrough.
Flying Dragon, we've done it.
Flying Dragon, my beloved. My god, it was so nice to finally hit the jackpot with something, as those Old One's Army invasions did become old about 5 hours ago. So I mean, now we had the power, let's fully appreciate its capabilities, with us first quickly taking out the Queen Slime for a mount, then cracking straight on with a home run, starting with the Cultist. Now, if you haven't seen my review on this weapon before, to say this was a beast would be an understatement, as in my humble opinion, the Flying Dragon might just be the best pre-pillar melee weapon in the entire game. It's seriously just that good, and with very little hassle, took down the Cultist like a knife through butter, meaning it was time to seemingly blitz through the pillars, which despite our non-typical armor not being fully optimal for this scenario, still didn't matter, as that fully tile-piercing projectile could stop anything in its tracks, making short work of any tanky enemies that the game could throw at us. And with us momentarily pausing the slaughter to create a nice long Moonlord platform, we were only inches away from the final hurdle. We just had to finish off that Stardust pillar, craft a boatload of super potions, and brace for impact, as after all we've been through, the Moonlord was finally up, which if I'm honest, I was perhaps a little bit overconfident about, as while I couldn't have really asked for better weapon-wise, our mobility was underwhelming to say the least, and made me realise that the Queen Slime mount would not be sufficient for this fight. But it's fine, it really is, just a little miscalculation on my part.
Nah. Alright, it's fine. We do it again.
So after us sadly failing our first attempt, only getting Moonlord to about half health, I thought we'd play it as safe as physically possible, as thanks to our fortunate scenario of having an utterly OP weapon, there was nothing stopping us quickly taking out Duke Fishron and obtaining the Shrimpy Truffle mount to solve all our mobility problems. Genuinely, what would I do without this thing, man? And so, with this in hand, it was rematch time. And wow, what a difference good mobility can make, with both our damage output and damage taking being exactly where I wanted them to be. You know, I find it really quite poetic just how much this challenge scales in the endgame, with us starting with literally no weapon in hand, to using grenades as our main source of damage, but a random summon, and then being forced to benefit from one of the most risk versus reward experiences in Terraria, the Odd One's Army. Either way though, all we can say now is that it all paid off, and gave us an extremely well-deserved Moonlord victory. That was quite the journey, wasn't it? And honestly, one of the more enjoyable Terraria playthroughs I've had, with the crossover loot limitation forcing us to stick to non-typical combinations of items and influencing more variety than you'd usually expect. And guys, if you've enjoyed today's adventure, don't forget to become part of the 200k gang while you can, as we're getting so damn close now. Anyway, let me know what you want to see next down below. And as always, this has been sockrteez, and I'll see you in the next one.